So I'll end by saying, no more excuses, guys. There are only two options: make progress or make excuses. Have I got your attention? I think what we're now going to do is offer you a real opportunity. Now listen, we've moved away from the story as to where you should be investing. Now let's give you a practical investment and let's see who will take it. So I'll request James, our regional director, to come up. Thank you.
Your Excellencies and all protocols observed, we're here to talk to you about the opportunities. I think Felix has articulated that very well. I'm glad to see many of you and a lot of our friends, many that we saw last year. We are here back again as promised with specific opportunities. But I'm also happy to see some of our friends from Kenya. I'm happy to see Mr. Shiri Shah, one of our partners, here with us. And maybe you may want to ask, where did this journey start? We know that it's a challenge for most people to invest informally, that we've been doing in Kenya, where people invest through unstructured processes. Through the chamas, some have worked, some haven't worked. Becky talked about having invested through certain vehicles, and many of you have had experiences. People have come to us and asked us, now Kenya is growing. How do we participate? How do we get the benefit of a growing economy? And unfortunately, people have been doing things, let's say buying piece of land, which is okay, but again, you find that you're either doing it through your normal chamas and maybe the groups disintegrate at some point, or you get conned, or you want to sell and you can't sell. So many, many challenges. Now for us as investment managers, what we do is try to come up with vehicles that are safe, regulated, that people can invest through. And when we looked at it, also when we look at Kenya, again, our markets are not very deep, so we also had to create asset classes. Right now, you only had bonds and shares that you could buy. But our challenge is to come up with additional asset classes like property, where now you can diversify your investments further. So that's where the discussion started in 2011. We started working with the Capital Markets Authority to come up with what we call real estate investment trusts. Now there are two types of REITs. But again, just to define what a REIT is, a REIT, an income REIT, is a vehicle or a trust that buys income generating properties. So it could be a shopping center, it could be a residential unit, any kind of property that earns rental income. That is what is called an income REIT. So there are clear commercial leases that underpin this kind of investment, and the income grows over time. And it provides you with liquidity. So the income REIT will be a listed vehicle on the stock exchange. So you can buy and sell anytime that you want, even though we recommend that you hold it as a long-term investment, not as something that you need for your school fees. So again, this is a sample of what a REIT would own, whether it's commercial office, residential, industrial, healthcare, educational facilities like schools, hospitality. But again, the intention is for the REIT to own these assets and to distribute the income to the investors. So what the REIT will do at the end of the year, it's going to distribute at least 80% of the income to the investors. I specifically talk about the REIT today because I know Felix has mentioned about many other products that we offer. If you want those, that is okay. You come to us and we will offer those to you. But today we specifically want to talk about this because it's time sensitive. It will be going to market on the 22nd of this month, that's Thursday next week, for a period of 3 weeks until the 12th of November, before the listing on the 24th of November on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Yeah, so a REIT basically gets returns from both sides. You have your total return, so the income is made from the rental income, which gives you stability, and that's distributed on an annual basis. But you also have your capital growth, the capital appreciation each year. As you value the properties, they keep going up. You heard about the fundamentals of the country. So you expect the industry, the real estate industry, to continue to grow. And therefore, as that demand continues, you expect to see continued appreciation of the buildings. So again, that benefit is passed on to the investors. So that's the structure of a REIT, where you have your investors here, the REIT is here, you have your properties, it's managed by a trustee, and you have a REIT manager, and that is Stanlib. So, and then you've got all the other service providers, but importantly to note is that the REIT is run by a trustee. So the trustee has a fiduciary responsibility of making sure the REIT is run properly, and it's a licensed institution by the Capital Markets Authority. And the REIT manager is also a licensed REIT manager, specifically licensed by the Capital Markets Authority. So just to give you a brief synopsis of REITs globally, you will find REITs across almost all the continents. But if you look at Africa, you only have REITs in South Africa. So there are no other REITs that are traded on the stock exchange in Africa, all of Africa, apart from South Africa. We have some in South Africa. We don't have nothing else across the continent. This year, we are only going to have the Stanlib Fahari Income REIT in Kenya, which will be the first REIT outside of South Africa in Africa. Sio ni maendeleo? So again, this is the evolution of REITs from the 60s all the way to 2010. As you can see, it started in the US and Netherlands, Australia, which has the biggest REITs market in the world. And then in the 90s, you had Canada and some of the countries. You have Ghana there that has the REIT legislation, but they're not yet, they don't have the REITs yet. I think they have a development REIT, but they don't have any REITs that are listed. In 2000s, you have South Africa there. In 2010, going forward, you're going to have Kenya join that list. Again, very good progress, but again, an opportunity for the investors. So US has the most developed REIT market. Over 60 REITs listed, and Australia, as I mentioned, has the largest property trust in the world. And the average total return on REITs was about 18%. That's the average return globally. Yeah, this just talks about a few jurisdictions. South Africa, Ghana has a REIT, as a development REIT, and Nigeria has a development REIT, but not listed, so you can't trade in and out. These are the returns. As you can see in South Africa, 35.7, but on average, 18% returns. I mean, these are very solid returns, but again, looking at our markets, you expect to see significant returns over time. That's the income yield. Again, that's an average of 6%. As I mentioned, returns are made of rental yield and capital gains. So the rental yields here on average are 6% and capital gains of about 12%. That's what makes the 18%. So that's a Stanlib Fahari REIT. As I mentioned, it's a collective investment scheme. It's an income REIT. And as I mentioned, there are two types of REITs. There's an income REIT and a development REIT. An income REIT is the one that I mentioned buys income generating properties that have rental income. A development REIT is a REIT that just does developments. It builds and possibly eventually exits or sells into income REITs. Now, we are starting with income REITs because income REITs are safer, they are less risky for the majority of investors. And there are specific institutions like Mr. Shirish, who's a developer, who can take development risk and that can work on a development REIT. But for most people, they're not able to stomach that development risk. So that's why we decided to come up with an income REIT, but also an income REIT eventually will provide an exit for developers who want to just develop and sell their properties and go back and develop more. So you expect to see a lot of economic activity coming out of this kind of REITs, because they'll be providing an exit for developers. So again, it's formed under trust deed. It divided into units. So when you buy, you are going to get units or shares, and they have a lower risk profile. Whatever they buy has a history, has a track record, goes through significant due diligence to make sure that whatever you're buying into is properly secured. And it's run by a trustee and managed by a REIT manager, who are both licensed by the Capital Markets Authority. So again, that's just an overview. We're going to offer these through an initial public offer, and that's going to be listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange on the 24th of November. So how do you get into it? When the offer is open next week on the 24th, on the 22nd, then you will have an opportunity to download the forms, fill, contact your stockbroker, and subscribe for your shares. So it's a very limited time offer. Again, why invest? I will not repeat what Felix has said. The story for Africa is real, it's solid, it's something we believe in. We are Afro-optimists. Whether you want it or not, Africa is growing. Kenya is growing. You've seen it. Whether you want it or not, it's going to grow. So why not participate? Why not jump in and ride the wave? So again, we won't go into the fundamentals there, but again, very strong fundamentals. We talked about the resilience of the economy. Kenya is very strategically, again, positioned. So we are seeing many companies coming to set up shop in Kenya. Again, we don't just rely on resources. We've been a service economy and growing very strongly. Now, once you add resources, you expect Kenya to continue to grow significantly. Again, private consumption is growing. Kenya is urbanizing. Right now, you're only at 23% rate of urbanization. We expect to see that to continue to grow. And as it grows, you expect to see a lot of demand for infrastructure, housing, shopping malls, residential, warehousing, name it. And then there is innovation there. You know, Kenya has become a hub for innovation. And there's a very strong entrepreneurial spirit. So again, we see all these acting as a catalyst for the growth of the Kenyan economy. So what does all that mean for property in Kenya? You continue to see significant growth. The government, as it opens up different areas, again, you are seeing like the bypasses, as you've seen. Felix showed you Kikuyu. Had you had land along Kikuyu, that land would have grown by 10 times by now. So as the roads open, you see property values also increasing. Shopping, again, the shopping culture is also coming in. You've seen malls coming up in Kenya and people participating quite strongly. There's significant demand for warehousing, industrial space. It's not there. We don't even have enough warehouses. But who's going to build them? Developers want to build and sell, and build and sell. So the REIT again provides the avenue to do that. So you participate in buying, so the developers can go back and build more, and we keep growing. So we need warehousing, we need schools, we need hospitals. Because if you look at Konza City, for example, Konza City has been set up now. The government will be looking for people to put up the hotels, and they're guaranteeing that they will get the tenants for those hotels. Or you put up a university, they'll get a tenant for the university. Or you put up a hospital, and they guarantee a tenant for the hospital. So who's going to earn that rental? That rental should come through into the REIT, so that you benefit from that rental. Yeah, so the Investable Universe, 75% property, hold some 25% in cash, because you also need cash to keep looking for opportunities and adding adding additional property. So this is the investable universe of what can be bought into a REIT. You can do mixed-use developments, retail, commercial, industrial, very diversified. Because the other thing you also want is you want to get into a property fund or a REIT that is diversified. So you're not concentrated in just one area. Or you go and buy a piece of land in Kitengela, and that is the only investment you have. If anything happens, then you're stuck. So this buys into different sectors so that you're also diversified within the property sector. So things like student accommodation, there is a lot of pressure for student accommodation. Who's going to build for students? Who's going to earn the income from this? So again, that will be passed on to the investors. So without naming names, these are some of the properties that we are securing. Again, as you can see, quite diverse, mostly in Nairobi currently, some in Mombasa. But again, the vision is to secure properties across the country. But as long as they're properties that meet certain return requirements that have been established. So quite a very strong pipeline, and you can see they come from commercial office to retail to warehousing. So that's just part of the pipeline that we have for the REIT. I've talked about the REIT, the structure. You have the REIT manager, who's Stanlib. You have the trustee, who's Cooperative Bank. So the only two trustees who are licensed in Kenya, that's Cooperative Bank and Housing Finance. So we're working with a Cooperative Bank, obviously regulated by the capital markets and working closely with the Kenya Revenue Authority, who's been gracious to give the exemptions on the REIT. The REIT is not a taxable entity, but the condition is that 80% of the income, rental income, annually has to be distributed to the members. And then the REIT is also required to have service providers. You have to have property managers. You have to have valuers. You have to appoint legal advisors and tax advisors. So very well regulated, very well protected, very strong governance structures in place. Yeah, so that's the governance basically. You have your asset manager, you have your trustee there, you have your investments, and then the income is distributed annually, 80% minimum at the end of each year. So these are the returns on property. You can see the stability on the dotted line. You can see how the property has been growing in terms of returns compared to other asset classes. The black line is the performance of the stock exchange, of the Nairobi Stock Exchange. The sharp peak there was in the 2000s when the market boomed significantly. But again, you can see the consistency of the property investments. Quite stable and quite solid over time. So something that I seriously encourage all of us to do. Again, as a fight against inflation, property has beaten inflation. If you had 100,000 shillings in 1990 and kept it in a bank account, that 100,000 shillings probably by now would be maybe what? 200,000? Maybe not, isn't it? But if you had 100,000 shillings in property, today that 100,000 could be probably worth more than even 10 million shillings. Yeah? So again, significant growth, but based on the fundamentals that we've talked about. So basically that's the transaction. We are raising $125 million. The transaction advisor is Stanbic Bank, CFC Stanbic. And you can see all the entities that you're working with. We are targeting 600,000 units, 600 million shares or units at 20 shillings a unit. So a share will be only 20 shillings. So again, this will come out officially on the 22nd when the offer officially launches. You can see the growth rates. Again, as expected, about 22%. You can see the historical growth rates, quite solid in the property sector. So why do we talk about this? we've been working on this because people have asked us, how do we participate in the property boom? This vehicle gives you access to the property sector. It gives you liquidity if you need to exit. You can buy and sell in the stock market. If you get into the IPO here, initial public offer, you can exit in the stock market later when you hit your returns, or you can keep it and keep earning your rental income. What happens here? Instead of you going to build your rental units or trying to put up a mall, like my friend Mr. Shirish, who can afford to do that. You know, these are very expensive ventures, but what you're saying is that this REIT will allow you to be able to afford whatever you can. If you're able to afford 1 million shillings, you can buy this. If you're able to afford 10 million, you can buy the REIT. So, again, it helps us to be able to invest in property at whatever level and earn the returns of the property market. So instead of waiting until you're able to get 40 million shillings to put up your apartments, you can invest whatever amount you're able to and keep earning that rental income. So you become, you know, those private developers, you know, so you become a mwananchi, not a mwananchi, now you become mwananchi also. Yeah, so really that is it. Again, just a call for you. We promised that we would come last year when we were here. We talked about coming up with various opportunities, and we promised that when the REIT will be ready, we'll come and let you know that the REIT is ready so that you can prepare yourselves and participate. What will happen next week? When the offer comes up on the 22nd, you can go to the Nairobi Stock Exchange website. You can download the forms. You can also go to the CFC Stanbic website or Cooperative Bank of Kenya, and you can download forms. You can go to stanlibkenya.com as well. You can download forms and contact your stockbroker, and you'll be able to fill in the forms and subscribe for your shares. And also just remember to also mention to your friends, wherever they are, that there's something big going to happen. This is going to be a major player in the market. It's going to be a game changer in terms of how things are done. We believe that it's going to be a major contributor in the economy. It's a tax-free vehicle. The government has given the tax exemption because of the significance of this, but also to encourage people to invest. What we'd hate to see is to see our fellow Kenyans missing out on an opportunity when international players actually are seeing the opportunity and are coming for it. We are seeing a lot of that happening. We've seen that happen in many projects, and sometimes you wonder whether why they are seeing what we are not seeing. So this is actually for us. So let's take advantage and maximize this opportunity. Thank you very much for your indulgence, and we'll be happy to take any questions to do with the income REIT. Thank you.